The following show is being broadcasted from an undisclosed location. Two former special operators have combined their badassery and now sharing it with the world.
Ain't alive no more.
All with a beer and a smile. This is the Savage Actual Podcast. And now your hosts, combat vets with 20 plus deployments between the two of them and enough testosterone to operate the power grid of Los Angeles. Savage Actual. Now your hosts, Jason and Patrick.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the channel. This is the Savage Actual Podcast and YouTube channel. My name is Jason Lilly, prior Marine. My co-host, Mr. Patrick Multrip. What's up, buddy?
Hoorah. Thanks for hanging out with us. And we have a special guest with us today. A good friend of the channel, good friend of mine, Mr. Yousef Badou. Hello, Yousef.
Semper Fidelis, gentlemen. Thank you for having me on.
It's
Thanks,
good.
Yousef, and spent some time in the Marines myself. And kind of why we brought this kind of story to bear today is I have some tracking experience teaching Marines to track out there and finding people and manhunting, all that fun stuff. And we all saw this story and thought, man, it's got a lot of action in this thing. It's like a movie.
Yeah, for sure. So today we're going to be talking about Mr. Cavalcante, the individual that was on the run in Pennsylvania, the Brazilian fellow that escaped from the prison. And what do you guys remember what the name of the town was in Pennsylvania? I got that.
It's a small town, man. It starts with a C, dude. I think I'm thinking of the.
And I think it was
prison.
a township. So if that's any indicator,
Right.
Township.
Yeah. So the prison escapee in Pennsylvania, we're going to be talking about that. And, Jason and myself and Badou all have sort of backgrounds in that sort of thing, escaping from prisons. No, not really. But, like Yousef said, he worked as a tracking instructor and human profiling instructor and actually owns his own company right now that specifically teaches profiling and a bunch of other stuff. And if you guys have seen in our War Stories and Beer episode from about probably a year ago, we sat down with Yousef and talked about him back then. And so it's awesome to have him on here when we're talking about this individual, this escapee from Brazil who was rolled up by the Border Patrol BORTAC team and Yoda the dog. And we'll get into some of that stuff a little bit later. But Jason, you want to start in on kind of the early background, a little bit of this guy?
Yeah, a little bit. So to answer your question, it was Chester County Jail that he escaped from.
Chester, there you go.
And geographically, I don't know where that's at, Pennsylvania. It's a small state. But to back it up, he's from a northern town in Brazil, Danilo. And in 2017, he got apprehended out there for murder, and he escaped. And somehow, I'd like to know those details, got to America. And I don't know if he came through the border of Mexico. I don't know exactly how he got into
Super
America.
hard to do nowadays.
Yeah,
from what I've seen, from what I had read, that's he crossed
From
the
Mexico?
southern border. Yeah, crossed the southern border, had a fake ID, and so he was actually already, like you said, he was already wanted in Brazil for a murder, but he didn't pop up on anything because he had a fake ID, and just how it is these days, man, catch and release, and he went on his way. So
yeah, he met through what means, I don't know, online dating and whatnot, met another Brazilian woman here in America, and they were together for a couple of years, and super toxic, abusive relationship. She had 2 kids from a previous marriage, and he ended up stabbing her, sadly, 38 times in front of her kids. And that's what kicked us off. He was detained and went to court, was in this jail for 9 days, and then escaped. So he was only there for 9 days, and dude escaped, which is
and the crazy thing was the crux of this, of him murdering her, was she found out about the murder in Brazil. Apparently, he had told her about it, or she found out about it and threatened to go to the police. Yep, and that's what he
So that was
killed her because of that.
That was the catalyst, huh? Holy shit!
Yep.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow. So this dude sounds like a capable individual, right? And a lot of people don't know that the dude was actually really small. He was only, which adds to this, I think, in my opinion. The dude's 5'1", 110 pounds. And if you haven't seen the video, I suggest Googling the actual escape video of him literally horizontally parkouring, feet behind him on the wall, hands in front, and used his body to shimmy up this wall vertically onto the roof, pushed the concertina wire up and off, and then jumped from the roof. And that was literally the start in August. So it was a 13-day run, and evaded up to 500 federal authorities. No ding on them, but like massive manhunt, DEA helicopters, to all kinds of local and state and county authorities, to what we'll get into, local population of civilians, and trail cameras. And I mean, this is pretty, I don't want to say it's awesome and cool, but it's pretty astounding that this dude evaded that long in 2023 with the technology that we have now. So
Yeah.
That's kind of the big gist of it, man. So yeah, let's dig into this a little bit. I mean, you two, it's backing up even more. I'm kind of the outsider here in the sense of you two met actually at the Tracking Combat Hunter program in the military, correct?
Yep. We started working together. And what year was that, Patrick? I can't remember.
It was, 2000. Well, I started there in 2017, and I think it was about a year later that you got there.
Came back. Yeah, I had come back. I'd already spent 10 years there, and then I left to start the business, and then they called me back to do another stint with you guys. So that's where we came back at that point. We started running around the hills, tracking, teaching people. And it's what's wild. What really caught my attention here was the amount of, manpower, Jason, that you mentioned, and the federal, authorities they brought in. This wasn't just a normal manhunt. This was a full-on task force. I mean, they flew out BORTAC,
Yep.
Border Patrol's elite unit from El Paso. Like you mentioned, the DEA unit. It's like, wow, that's what got my attention. It's like, who is this guy? And the more you start to unravel this thing, it's like this guy is like the Brazilian Jason Bourne, man. It's like, oh my God, it's Jason Bourne. And it's multiple things. It's not just him parkouring up the thing. It's kind of like multiple events of like, who is this guy making it out of the perimeters and doing these kind of other evasion. Patrick, you were a SEER guy, right? You taught
Yep.
that for a while. I mean, I think this could be a case study in, search, evade, and rescue. He had a lot of luck. He made mistakes, but he had,
Yep.
a kind of lot of wherewithal and a lot of luck that got him through a lot of this stuff. So that's just a wild reason. And the tracking side of this, the man tracking side, there's a bunch of, really kind of cool, interesting points we can talk about. No knock on any of the federal agencies. It was a big manhunt, but there's cool little points. It's like, man, if we had a tracker or a small team of trained trackers, they could have intercepted maybe a little bit quicker. Who knows, really? But it's just cool talking points.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. And it always depends on, and this, Yousef, it depends on the environment. They were having a lot of rain. They were having a lot of storms up there. They specifically talked about the night when they ended up actually capturing this guy, or that early that next morning, that they were using FLIR. They were flying the area. They knew he was in a general area. So they were doing runs with a FLIR camera, trying to pick up his heat signature. And they ended up having to initially turn that off or stop the search with that because of lightning storms. So he was in an area with a very heavily wooded area. And I'm from the northeastern United States, from upstate New York. And so you've got just heavy brush in that area, oaks and a lot of pine and maple and heavy brush and stuff. So I can 100% understand the environment that he was in was super, super difficult to get people into. And he was taking advantage of that. We had heard on the news that they were saying that, or afterwards when he had talked about it, that the way he was covering himself up and using leaves and things like that. Yeah, 100%. And it's funny, Yousef, that you mentioned the SEER thing, because when they had stated on the news that they had kind of trapped this guy in a 4-mile square area that was near some sort of park or something like that. It was some sort of botanical garden. Yeah.
1,000 acres.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. They kept seeing him in that area. So they basically had that whole area surrounded. And my thought was, well, it'll be the end of the day and they'll have this guy in cuffs. And later that next morning when it came out, I actually got up and I turned on the news because I was interested in see what was going on. And they were like, oh yeah, he got out somehow. He got through the perimeter, got a van and had taken off. My first thought was, oh, this guy's gone, because that's the thing is like what you mentioned about seer. When you're talking about evasion type of situation, the first thing you want to do is that distance. Like you don't know if whoever is tracking you, if they have dogs. Obviously, you have to assume, tracking team, dog teams, helicopters, whatever. You need to maximize that distance between where they're looking for you in whatever where you're heading. Like if he was heading to Canada, he should have got behind that wheel and just gone until the damn gas was out of that vehicle. You know what I'm saying? But
that's actually what happened. He ran out of gas, believe it or not.
Right, but
Yeah.
he had driven 25 miles to go see somebody that he had worked with. He was trying to make some contacts and get some people to help him. Yeah, so he didn't just like turn north and go. I mean, he from where he was at, probably that north. He should have been in New York State, easy. From the middle of Pennsylvania to the border of New York State's probably 50, 75 miles. 100 miles maybe at the most. I mean, he could have gotten pretty close to getting to the border of New York State, and he didn't. He went looking for.
Yeah, and in terms of like law enforcement response, this is a huge amount of bodies. I don't know how many hundreds of people involved, and a lot of times it's like that old movie, The Fugitive, like hey, I want a perimeter, blah, blah, and he's yelling. It's like they look at normal statistics, especially what you learn in search and rescue tracking is like your average person can move, depending on the terrain and their fitness, 2.5, 3 miles an hour. Depending on the terrain, and that terrain was wild. So they'll draw a circle and go, okay, he's on foot right now. Let's set up the perimeter here. All he has to do is be 10 feet outside that perimeter when it goes down, and he can be gone. So they were giving him a crap for like, oh, how do you get out of the perimeter? It's like, well, a perimeter it's not like I have walls, and it's not like we dome the thing in. And I've tracked over a lot of continents over the world, and I've taught a lot of students. I've been to the Hawaiian jungles, the Okinawan jungles, North Carolina, and Virginia. I will tell you, like, you think, oh, Japanese jungle, it's bad, it's not fun. But by far the worst terrain I've ever been in is Northern Virginia with deadfall, and then North Carolina swamp. That is the worst. I think we got on the ground one time and we had this training plan, like, hey, we're going to take these students out. So which recon range, I think, Jason. Who's over there in the East Coast? I can't remember that. The third,
you got second force, second recon, and second
recon,
second Raider battalion.
Yeah, it was second recon, and like we gave the OPSO the training plan. Say, all right, we're going to move 3.5 kilometers from here to here, and we had it mapped out. We'd never been there before, and he just like laughed in our faces. He's like, bro, maybe you get 500 meters, maybe. And we're like, what are you talking about? And it was true. It was so bad, and like in terms of even having a trained tracker. Even if that task force had them on the ground, I've been in North Carolina and Virginia where trackers, we look for disturbances, fresh disturbances, vegetation out of place or in the wrong direction. So, in California, you might step on some grass or vegetation and it will lay down for a certain amount of time and eventually come back up. I've stood there in North Carolina and stepped on a plant and watched it go whap right back to normal. I've walked on a trail and they said, oh, I forgot something, or I need to go back and turn around, and I can't even see my own trail. So, I mean, the press was knocking them like, oh, how do you get out of the perimeter? It's like, well, it's 1,000 acres of dense, horrible vegetation. Yeah, no kidding.
Yep. Yeah, and there was a press conference where they mentioned one of the, I think he was the sheriff of the county had mentioned, he's like, we can't, he goes, we can't walk through here arm in arm. We can't get online and close a circle in on this guy. He goes, there's going to be spaces. And he took advantage of it. To that guy's credit, to Cavalcante's credit, he took advantage of those breaks in the line and was able to get through,
Yeah, to add to that, we could talk about his background a little bit, geographically speaking. Like, he is from a very rural area of Brazil. Brazil is known for humidity. It's known for rainfall. It's known for, like, much like you're saying, triple canopy jungles, jaguars. It's not fucking super easy terrain. Like, so this dude definitely grew up in this environment, was on the run, was on the lam for a long time already, and then arrived in America. So if dude would have like escaped in January in the Northeast, things probably would have been a lot different. You've got snow on the ground. You've got fucking freezing temperatures,
more sparse vegetation,
hunting season,
especially hunting season. You've got, especially with helos in the air using thermals, that contrast of like cold ground, cold snow, and then the heat signature from a 98.2 degree human, like that contrast would have been easier, I think. So I think dude probably would have got wrapped up really quickly, potentially in the winter. Mm-hmm. So this dude escaped at a good time in the sense of weather. He's used to hot, humid. And the dude's, more importantly, I saw it written in Steal the author's thunder here. The dude was desperate. You're facing life in jail. This is freedom. I mean, this is the definition of freedom.
Probably his last chance.
He had just been sentenced. He'd been sentenced to life in jail. Yeah, or life in prison for that murder. So absolutely.
Yeah. And then he also was going on a video trial already with the authorities back in Brazil. So he's going to get pegged on both ends. And it's probably definitely going to stay here. But, I mean, the dude's definitely double screwed in that area. So, I mean, it's amazing that dude made it that long, but not surprising at the same time. I think, like you said, there's a lot of luck involved, desperation, the will to live, the will to survive. He's in a, mammalian, animalistic mindset at this point. Like that's crazy. I'm fascinated with the whole thing, and it's sad that that he hurt who he hurt and affected the kid's life and whatnot. But just the mass amount of manpower against one person who had nothing.
Yeah, I was wondering too initially, like when I obviously I understand this guy murdered somebody and he murdered somebody in Brazil, so you've got somebody who's clearly has a track record of being a fucking dangerous individual. But I was a little surprised initially when they brought so much to bear against this individual. I think what it probably was is initially the Pennsylvania State Troopers were like, hey, we're going to roll this guy up super quick. This is going to be easy. So we have a general idea where he's at. When it didn't happen, I don't know, public pressure,
yes.
Especially when one of you guys mentioned, he got into people's garages and started stealing firearms and things like that. It's like, okay, now we need to start putting a little bit more work into this guy.
Yeah, dude didn't grub. He didn't eat for the first 3 days.
Yep. So drinking water out of streams and watermelon. Yep.
Yeah, we were talking about that before you got on. I guess he was doming these watermelons. That's how he opened it, with his own head, which is kind of mind-boggling. I mean, like Patrick said, you got an elbow, you've got fists, you've got rocks and trees around. Throw it against the fucking
He's gone full native, bro.
Yeah.
But you both mentioned the mindset. So he was desperate, facing life in prison. But also from a man tracking perspective, we tell our students, I know you've heard me say this before, Patrick, we'd get our young guys who are, full of piss and vinegar, and they'd be closing in on their quarry. And it's like, okay, you have to take in the fact, like, what are you getting yourself into? The end of a track line then is finding them, So let's say, if it's maybe a multiple people or it's a group of people you're tracking, they might have the thought that they might be able to get away, as opposed to maybe someone who is wounded or sick or knows they're being run down. Are you just going to run right into that situation? Because that's a situation where someone's like, I can't believe no one was hurt in all this, between the carjackings and the theft, home invasion, all of it. Like, he didn't go over that next step. And I don't know how many tracking stories I've heard where it's mostly law enforcement, where they're tracking someone down and the tracker trips over the bad guy and that gets into a 5-foot shootout. So not only the desperation, but that mindset, and nobody got hurt in that. So good on the law enforcement, good on that, getting that dog out there quick, whatever it is, because it could have went a different way,
Oh, yeah. For sure.
Yeah, I know. He got it's 22. It looked like a Ruger type, 22 rifle, scoped. Looked like it had a Tasco or something on top of it. Does that dude even know how to use that gun? Was it even loaded? Who knows? But I know, like we talked about before we recorded, is dude was definitely pressed upon. So he stole the van, or he stole that rifle. The owner, I guess, was like 52 years old, came out pressing that pistol, and shots fired at the guy. Didn't get hit. Luckily, luckily, the innocents didn't get hit. I don't even know if Danilo even fired, to be honest with you. But yeah, crazy. So I'm surprised. The dude was definitely had nothing to lose, and everything to fucking gain. So I'm
Well,
surprised he didn't.
he was really working hard to reach out to other people because do you see they arrested his sister? Apparently, his
Yes,
sister lived in the area. They arrested his sister because
visa
he had
violation.
reached out to her, and I think she potentially could have given him
Just
some
tell
sort
the
of assistance, and they
Mhm.
haven't really put that out yet. But she assisted him some way, and then when the police tried to get her involved or whatever, she refused to help them, so they ended up arresting her. But he went to two different individuals that he worked with, and it was the one individual that had the ring camera, and he instantly called the police, and so you had this videos of this guy standing at this individual's porch, different clothes already. He had freaking, a rain jacket on. He, had changed his clothes multiple times or whatever. So, the guy was working hard, but he definitely made some mistakes. Like
Yep.
we had said before,
Yep.
the fact that he was trying to get somebody else to help him. Who knows what kind of relationship they had, but he clearly thought that individual was willing to help him if he was going to go that far out of his way to try to link up with somebody.
And that's a huge no-no too. It's like if you're casting your net out there, you're looking for an individual, and you don't have a last point of origin, you don't have a location for him. That's number one thing you're going to do is, all right, let's look at the history. Family
Yep.
members, friends, girlfriends, ex-girlfriends, places of work, places wherever that person frequented. You're going to descend a net on that place because you're hoping they make contact. You're hoping they make
Yep.
contact, and there's going to be your thread. So, yeah, I think had he done what you said, Patrick, is just beat feet and gotten the heck out of there, it would have been better for him. But it's interesting too, going back to the seer kind of mindset, is this guy was like planning in chunks. When they finally caught him, he goes like, at first he just got out of the jail and I just ran for it. Then I got into the woods and then I got, some watermelon and water. And then my plan in the next 24 hours was to get a car jacket and head to Canada or Puerto Rico. So this guy was even chunking out his thinking. And isn't that one of the things they teach you, in SEER?
Yeah, I mean, there's
Every
that
hour by
initial. That's
hour.
the thing is there's that initial separation when you become separated, or if you're a pilot and you eject, whatever. That first minute on the ground, all you're doing is separating yourself from that point. Whether it be, hey, I'm going to patrol and I just got separated from my team, or I'm in an aircraft that goes down, whatever the case may be. You need to separate from that area and then start thinking about capture and stuff. So he clearly was, you don't have to be trained in SEER to have that type of mindset and to have that understanding, especially somebody like Jason had said. This guy had already been on the run in Brazil for a long period of time, made his way to the United States and was successful, so he had a little bit of self-confidence. He had a little bit of knowledge on how to survive in the wild. And he wasn't exactly making a lot of mistakes. It was just, I think initially, instead of him getting, and it could have been too, like him, as soon as the police realized this guy was gone and they were able to wrap him up, I think the trail cam didn't work in his favor, like a lot of the other cameras. I mean, you guys know, look at the society we live in today. Where are cameras? They are everywhere. And he clearly didn't know he was on that trail cam because they have him multiple times coming through that one area around that botanical gardens. So
And it's a rural
obviously,
area,
yep,
Think about this is like farm country, and it still got
yep,
caught like 6 different times on a camera. Imagine a suburban or an urban environment. Your
Right.
your, your face is everywhere.
Especially with
yeah,
the AI facial recognition, that's like all over the place now. But if you think about it, the dude, we're hyper focused on the American time he was evading, but I mean, the dude's been technically on the run for 6 years,
yeah,
and escaped a whole other continent and infiltrated through Mexico, I guess, into America. I mean, the dude's kind of been in this mindset in this OODA loop for the last 6 years. So it's kind of like, I mean, the dude's almost like a rabid animal in the sense. Like that dude's not like complacent and lax. You know what I'm saying? Where he fucked up is he, lost his fucking cool and took someone's life, and one, got into a relationship, which he probably shouldn't have done. There's a series of things, I guess, big ticket items that like inevitably led to this. But
movie Ronin, never have anything you can't walk away from in 60 seconds. No, Heat. It was Heat.
Yeah, Heat. That's right. Wayne Grow.
Yeah, Wayne Grow. Yeah,
dude,
best mullet ever. But
that was two good movies though. Ronin and Heat, man, holy shit, good movies. But yeah, like that's what I said. He had that. I think that guy was sort of operating in that mindset for a long time, and clearly the dude, when you're just, he's a killer. He's not a stable person. I mean, to kill his girlfriend in front of his two kids is completely ridiculous, and
societal taboos and laws and boundaries, that dude permeates all that, man. That dude,
he has no
left and right lateral
boundaries.
Limits of boundaries are fucking wide open, which is another reason why this dude's able to pull off what he did. He's not really super self-reliant on fucking cell phones, and I don't know how good his English is, but dude's still in a foreign fucking country, man. The guy's used to operating solo, it seems like.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and I haven't heard in any of the things I saw, I didn't find that he had a cell phone in him. And it's like, for all your listeners out there, it's like, you have no idea. I heard the term before. It's called digital dust. How much digital dust you leave in your wake, and how easy it is for the ability to track people. And people have been taking their cell phones to protest, riots, murders, and whatnot, and they can tell you the entire story just based off your cell phone. They can do all sorts of crazy stuff, and it's very hard to. There's another video out there where a guy tries to go completely unplug, and they gave him like a 24-hour head start. And he like threw his credit cards out the window and cell phones and did everything he could. And they had him within, I think, 22 hours. They had caught him based on whatever it was.
What about, and that's a excellent point. Think about that Koberger guy, the guy in Idaho that killed those college students, the 4 college students. He was working on his doctorate in criminal justice. And this was last year. Do you guys remember that?
Vaguely,
he went in. Yeah, he went in the middle of the night and killed those 3 girls and that one girl's boyfriend. But they've got tons of exactly what you said, the digital dust of his phone prior to the event. He was there for days in and around the house, but nothing during that. But then the next morning, while the police were there, they had him again at the house, driving around the neighborhood, just seeing what happened from his seeing what turned up from his crime. But that's the thing, is like with this guy, he didn't have any of this stuff. That's the one thing with this guy. He was running completely off the grid. He didn't get a hold of anybody's phone. He didn't have anything like that. So yeah, he was completely austere out in the woods trying to survive. And I think if they had kept this guy encircled for a few days longer, I think he would have gotten a little bit more desperate, if he didn't have any more food. Because, the article that Jason and I had read, where he's just, he's hiding under logs. He's freaking covering his shit up with leaves. He's, it would have been freaking desperation very quickly.
Well, Jason, what you just said, light, he was traveling light. I want to read this quote from one of the Lieutenant Colonel, the Pennsylvania State Police Lieutenant Colonel George Bivens. The press was giving him shit about, him getting out of the perimeter. And I want you guys to listen to this quote and see if any of this sounds familiar. He pointed to several factors that made the operation very challenging. Longwood's dense vegetation and large drainage system, the heat and high humidity, and the sheer weight of the officers' equipment. As soon as I heard drainage ditches and heat and high equipment, I was like, I've been there before. I remember this from Iraq, from stories from Afghanistan, because they'd plant their IEDs in the drainage ditches, whether it was the Taliban or whatever it was, the Iraqi, Adidas wearing guy, they'd have an AK and a magazine, and we were rolling around. I remember, I think my second time to Iraq, I got this like Rhodesian chest rig, and I had like 8 magazines in this thing. And I just did damage to my upper back. I'm like, well, this is a horrible idea, dying coming out of the thing. So I just thought
you nailed it right there, brother. I mean, people, over beers and whatnot, civilians have asked me, like, how were the Taliban? And I'm like, dude, they're honestly really good fighters. And they've been fighting, 14 different empires off, away from their country. But I equated them to almost, no knock on them as human beings, but in the sense of like wiry, kind of beat down coyotes. They're malnourished, so far into their diet restricted their vision. They can't see very, very far. 200-300 meters. A lot of people don't know like their diet and the vitamin deficiency. So you look at the parallels between this guy and like the Taliban. Traveled light, desperate. Surrounded by, people hunting him, he's tapping into that encoded DNA survival that we all have, and coming from, I hate saying this word, but coming from a third world country his entire life to a very prominent, spoiled first world country, there's a reason this dude lasted so long, because he's used to being light. He's used to not having much. He's used to being poor. He probably grew up pretty tough, like a lot of people do. Yep. So he's a tough character, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. Not living on much, so which I think added to all of this.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the worst thing about that conversation is, the chief of police or whoever it is, their rep, talking about how, the amount of gear and how heavy and laden down with equipment that the officers are. I'm sure all of us can understand that. And, the sad thing is the first couple of days of this, when I saw it on the news, I made a comment to my wife. I'm like, look at this freaking guy. There's a cop out there who's already 100 pounds overweight. He's got all this crap on. I was just like, Jesus Christ. I was like, this guy's going to have a heart attack out in the goddamn bush. But we as Americans, we as a fighting force, and not just our military, but it crosses over. As soon as you see the police doing tactical stuff, they mirror the military as far as equipment, gear, weapons, like to a T. You guys know the amount of crap that we wear. I mean, just your armor can weigh 50, 60 pounds, and that's not even getting into everything else that you've got on. And these guys are out there the same thing. When you're out hunting somebody and you're out tracking, I think the best thing that they could have done is, and Yousef, I'm sure like, you have a tracking team, you guys, like less gear, maybe a rifle, or super, if you're going to wear armor, super light armor. I probably wouldn't even wear a helmet, man. Move quietly, freaking, that's the downside, is these guys were so geared up and just everybody traveling together. And he said multiple times that the officers were within feet of him or almost stepped on him. It's like he 100% has the advantage in that situation. And we have, with all that gear, is not an advantage at all.
I've been 10 years in the Marine Corps infantry, did all my deployments in Iraq. So we're just, we're light infantry laying down with all this crap, And then I remember I was at Combat Hunter. I was a Marine at Combat Hunter, and we got sent out to 3rd Recon Battalion to go do a package out there. And we go out there, and this is the first time I'd been out there, and it blew my mind. It was mixed bag. It was recon and some infantry from the MU, and we had about 30 students. And the commanders made the call, and we all show up in plate carriers and helmets and whatever, and they're getting off the bus in just the LBVs, just the no plate carriers, boonie hats, and we're like, well, what are you guys doing? Supposed to be in gear. We've been training for Iraq so much, and the deployment cycle in the 1st Marine Division, that's all we knew. When you trained, you had everything. They're like, bro, we're going to the jungle. It's 98 degrees, 100% humidity. Like, you're going to fall out in 5 minutes.
Like Vietnam style, JWTC,
yep.
man.
Yeah. So we
Yep.
went with them, and that was how it was. And I was like, so there's another way of doing this, And it was, meanwhile, we're all
And it
falling
makes a
out.
huge difference.
Huge
It
difference.
makes a huge difference, not just on like, because unless your stuff is really wired tight, you've got all this extra noise from your gear, the nylon and shit rubbing together, the noise of your weapon. If you've got anybody else around you, it's loud. Unless you're like fucking sneaking and peeking and you're really trying to be quiet with all that stuff, it makes it so much more difficult. And then what do they all got on? I mean, almost to a T, these guys had on headsets, their helmets, all this crap. It's just like they put themselves at a disadvantage from
And
the word go.
when you're having all that, when you're sweating, when you're breathing hard, when you're exerting yourself, your awareness, your situational awareness is doing this. It's going boom, boom. It's like tunnel vision. It's getting smaller and
Yep.
smaller and smaller. We'd have guys run on the track line. We'd be following a guy and they think they're close and they start running. And we'd specifically put them in an ambush situation if they did that. And the point was, it's like, dude, if you're running and you got this gear on and you're jangling, you're huffing about how much, where's your awareness at? It's gone. So they run into it and they'd be all butthurt about it. And the debrief was like, dude, slow down, use the advantage, have patience with it instead of running into a situation just like, luckily nothing bad happened with these guys. But yeah, the gear thing, man, we've just been geared for so long, mounted for so long, and that's trickled down to law enforcement. I don't know.
Let's talk about that real quick, man. All amazing points. Look at your average police force. Overweight, predominantly. Sitting 90% of the day.
Bad diet.
How often do they actually train? I mean, are they exercising a lot? Most likely not. And I'm not knocking these dudes, but it is America as a whole. Like, we're a super obese nation. So even your average police force throughout America, I don't care where you're at, is probably obese. They sit a lot. They're not used to wearing kit. Now they're all jocked up because there's a threat. They don't train in that gear. They don't train for these types of events. So who is training are your local SWAT, your BORTAC dudes, And you look at some of their kit, some of their picture. A lot of them, like you said, are basically in LBVs. They're traveling light. But on the counter side, much like you said, there was a lot of roads in the area. They had a lot of road perimeters set up. Their ease of access. They're hunting that way. Their strength is communication, is instant communication. In that shit that they're shifting, right? So, but again, they're not the ones actually breaking through the brush and all this fucking kit with rifles and slings. You're tired. You're probably tired because you've been awake for 24 hours at this fucking point on overtime, and you're only left and right with guys, a few cops online, right? So I think even to them at the individual level, how big the scale of that perimeter is, like real time, like what does this look like? Where is everyone at? How many dudes are on the same comms channel? Look at the Marine Corps. One cop could be just hot micing the whole fucking time. There's the breakdown of communication. There's so many variables at each hour of this 13-day event. So,
and think about all that stuff that you mentioned, Jason. So you're putting yourself sort of in the mindset and physicality of those officers.
Yes.
Put yourself in the mindset and physicality of Cavalcante.
Yep.
And you guys both know this. We've all spent umpteen hours in the field. How many times have you guys been in the field, been in the prone, Jason as a sniper, Yousef as a freaking tracker, you're down, and you hear dudes coming. Every single time one of these officers was 200-300 yards away, he heard it. Them chattering on the radio, them talking to each other, their gear banging around. Nobody was sneaking up on this guy. Nobody was. The fact that he was able to camouflage himself over and over and over in all these positions where he says himself in the interview, there was at least 3 separate occasions where he was within feet of and almost stepped on by these officers. It's because he knows they're coming. He hears them. Now he's at the advantage. Maybe he can't move where he is at that disadvantage, but you get down low, you get under a freaking fallen tree, you cover yourself up, whatever you got to do, you hide yourself, and these guys just walk on by. They're looking, but clearly, again, like we talked about earlier, that environment is an environment where there's a lot of probably leaves down. It's very wet. There's been a lot of storms in the area. So whatever he was doing or moving around in that natural environment wasn't enough to cue these guys in. They probably didn't have any tracking training. They didn't have any awareness. And Yousef, you have to have that.
Yeah.
These officers don't have that. And
to jump on that, dude, like I gave a lot of courses on optics, especially like handheld thermals. And I've used the old shit to the new shit. That all goes out the window in dense, basically triple canopy from top to bottom. Horizontally as a dude on the ground, I say I've got like a handheld thermal, right? Like looking through, you're not pushing 5 feet beyond this wall of foliage. Plus, depending on the time of day, heat, humidity, everything gets washed out. You're not seeing through it. So all of it, much like Afghanistan, gets equalized. So the adversary to the aggressors, in this case, the police against the defender, the guy that's like escaping, trying to, like that playing field gets equalized like really fucking quick, man. So in defense of the police, they had a hard job specifically in that fucking terrain.
For sure.
The dude was in the best position he could be, pros and cons, but humidity, altitude, change in elevation, micro terrain, these cops being told to hold this line. So you got a perimeter, right? You've got an outside line, but how many dudes are on foot on a patrol? How many different patrols of 2 to 6 man teams walking through the inside of this perimeter? Like, what are they actually fucking seeing? Like, hey, I'm in this position. This is my grid. Do they got, they got a fucking, GPS on their fucking wrist? Like, there's so many variables to this. And like, kind of honestly, like no wonder this dude evaded that fucking long.
Have you guys seen the Sean Ryan interview with DJ Shipley? Have you guys seen that one?
No, I know what you're talking about. I saw 5 seconds of it.
It's banana sandwich from front to back. It's just a wild, we've all been there to the situation, but this is some of the wildest stuff I've ever heard. And one of the situations was where they actually were, running out, chasing an HVT who'd squirted out of the house. He'd ran into a palm grove, that was over their head. Not palm grove, but basically the head high grass that they had out there. So it's a 500 by 500 thing. They have an AC-130 Spectre gunship on there with their optics, able to search in there. They're arm in arm, walking them on. They have the heat signature of the HVT, and they're like, step forward. And they're like, all right, you're getting close. And they're like, this is at nighttime. They're like, we don't see him. They have nods on. We don't see him. Take another step. And then finally, like, there was a blank spot. And they're like, where's he at? And the Spectre gunship's like, you're standing on him. Your left guy is standing on him right now. And everyone's doing this. And they couldn't see him. So they're like, everyone get out of the palm grove, because this guy had like a PKM, So it's like, you have a Spectre gunship literally telling you one of your guy, and they still couldn't. And it's no fault of theirs, just because of the edge and the night. And it was a zero moonlit night. It's like sometimes you can have all the things in the world and still not get it.
And on that note, brother, I would like to look at the data on the moon phase, the wind.
Interesting.
The actual and me being like a sniper, right? Like all of that, just visually speaking, and then there obviously this is 24 hours a day. So like during the night phase, like what dudes percentage wise, say for one section, one perimeter, how many dudes in that line actually had nods or thermals? Mm-hmm. I guarantee
I would say probably not a lot of them. Small. I mean, if you look at some of the pictures of these guys, if you look at some of the pictures, they all had your average kit. I didn't see dudes running around with nods. There was a couple of them that I had seen, and I think it was the Bortak guys in the state SWAT had that stuff. But you're not, like you were saying before, every officer isn't going to be out there with night vision or thermals. They just don't have the funds to gear up all these guys with that kind of stuff.
The state SWAT, like Bortak, they got all the cool Gucci gear, but like you're a state entity, you're a county entity, You can be the SWAT team. A lot of times those departments, depending where you have to come out of pocket. So it's like, or let's say they did get funding for NVGs, they might be 7 Bravos. It's like, so what's the quality of the optics you're using out there? So
not only the quality of the optic, it could be the best gear. How many hours and repetitions have you done with that gear? And in a high stress environment.
Absolutely.
How has your training been? Like most of those dudes are doing barricades. The snipers are doing 100-meter and less shots. Like they do like a lot of fucking kicking door down stuff, not like a dude on foot in a fucking urban into a rural environment. So it's like, they got to train for a wide palette of scenarios, man. And this is a very unique palette. This is a very unique scenario. So, like I'm not bashing.
I have to assume that they're the weather wasn't in their favor. I mean, they showed the guy multiple times. He was had a rain jacket on multiple days. Yeah, it was multiple days of rain. And when they finally did sort of have him in an area where they were like, hey, we know this guy's in there, we just can't fucking find him. They're running FLIR from the helicopter, and they got a signature, and then they ended up having to stop because they had lightning. So this guy's in that wet, stormy environment. I think that was a big factor in his favor this entire time. When you're in an environment of just constant rain, you guys know it's easy to move through that slowly. In a situation like that, it might have been in the officer's advantage because they can probably get a little bit closer without being heard. You know what I'm saying? If you got a nice steady rain like that, it sort of masks that sound traveling, and also it's going to work in his favor as well.
Yeah. Or if they're all what we used to call Gore 4, Gore-Tex out, hoodie up, you're not hearing anything with that rain patter hitting the Gore-Tex. You're not hearing anything. We do watch, we do patrols or whatever. It's like, take all that crap off, bro. It's like you're not wearing any of that on a patrol because it messes your awareness up. And, some of the things, if you look at the imagery of where he was spotted on cameras, again, I'm knocking these guys. They did a great job. They caught him without any violence. But like thinking about tracking, you guys remember Christopher Dorner years back? He was LAPD cop, went nuts, did an active shooter.
Yeah.
They caught him up in Big
that
Bear.
was a crazy situation.
That was the black guy, right?
Yep, LAPD, former Navy officer.
Yep, Navy guy. Yeah, I remember the story, man. Pretty crazy.
We were in 29 Palms at the time. We almost responded to that crazy story. So I'm a contractor at this point, a combat hunter. We got a team of Marines with us, and we're training 7th Marines out there. This is going down. We're watching in our hotel room, and Big Bear is about 45 minutes away from 29 Palms as crow flies. We're watching it, and they get to a point. He had this blue Tacoma, and this guy was doing all sorts of crazy, not even seer stuff. He was doing like feints and deceptive strategic things. He took his badge and his ID and dropped it off in National City. Then he made sure he got on camera in this other part of the county. So everyone was going nuts. And he ended up in Big Bear. It was snowing. He had a blue Tacoma. I think it broke down or ran out of gas. I can't remember, but he sets it on fire. Dumb thing to do. But he sets it on fire. And so they have the news helicopter. We're watching this thing burn. And what it done is it burned out the snow in about 10 feet radius of the burning car, right? And we hear the news commentator. They're like, yeah, police say they have tracks on the ground, but that they don't lead anywhere. And they lost the track line. And we're this huge team. We're like 12 of us. And we freak out. We're like, what? What do you mean they don't lead anywhere? Absolutely they lead somewhere. So long story short, we start calling people. I'm calling my friends who are San Bruno sheriffs. We ended up talking to the incident commander, and we're like yelling at her. We're like, hey, man, we're ready to rock. We'll be up the mountain right now. Like, we can track this dude, especially in snow. That's an easy day. And we're about to jock up and go up there. Then we finally talked to the incident commander, and we were talking to her, and she's like, who are you guys? We're like, we're a mixed group of active duty Marines and defense contractors. And she's like, no, what? No, don't come up on this hill. I'll arrest you if you come up. She had no idea who we were. She's like, no, thanks. We got it, But
she's like, we'll just burn them alive in a cabin.
Yeah. It kind of happened, but they ended up catching them up to him the next day. But that's a point that a trained tracking team could have interdicted, because all you need is a last known point of origin, And so when you have the trail cams. You have the ring cameras where they caught this guy 6 different times. A lady saw him crouched by the side of the road. That's gold, man. If you could deploy a small team of people, that's your trail right there. But a lot of time they'll just get that point and they'll put a huge perimeter around it, which is not a bad thing to do. But that last point of origin, that can give you just gold, and you can put a team on, especially if you have dogs too, and the person's on foot, you can close that gap fairly quickly. But not a lot of people trained in this stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Well, and to that point, I think that's exactly why they brought in BORTAC.
Yeah.
And Jason and I have had conversations with the BORTAC agent Jammer on here, Aaron Schweitzer, former recon Marine, guys just got a ton of experience in this, and we you know, he couldn't comment on this, of course, but we actually just had sat down with him not that long ago when this stuff was going on, right when it kicked off, and he was bummed that he couldn't get out there because his guys were all going out there. He was bummed.
I bet.
But I mean, that's why they bring these guys in. This is what BORTAC is great at. They're great at tracking these guys in these rough conditions, where mainly along the southern border. I mean, Yousef, you've been down there. We've been down there tracking on horseback and down there on the southern border, and you see the situation that's in. These guys are good at that. And then, of course, they're bringing in these dogs that are trained to another level. You know, they're basically military working dogs, the Malinois that, yeah. I think when these guys were kind of brought,
that they were the ones that caught them out of all these hundreds of people.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. When these guys were brought to bear to this situation,
yeah.
When they were introduced, of course, it wasn't going to take much longer. That's for damn sure. You know,
right? Especially one guy. You know, but again, the dude had the advantage to the terrain. The playing field got equalized compared to the southern border, where, much like Afghanistan, there's wide open terrain, thermals, all these different scopes. Your air assets can see at such a distance. You're only seeing a few feet in front of you in this, I mean, call it what it is, this jungle environment. So they got lucky they actually caught the guy. I'm surprised he didn't get away, which is just the proximity to Canada, to all the green out there. So,
well, those are, like you said, those are the mistakes that he made. The mistakes that he made, like Yousef had mentioned, on the sear side of things, he didn't have enough knowledge to say, I need to create as much distance as possible from my escape point, where he was able to stop, sort of assess the situation. I need some supplies. I need this. I need that. I need to get out of my clothing, which he was able to do that fairly quickly. But then some of his decisions from that point were, that untrained individual. I'm going to try to get help, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that. Not, I'm going to create as much distance, especially once he got out of that perimeter. The guy should have been gone. Eventually they're going to catch him. Yeah. Eventually they were going to catch him. I mean, I don't think we've ever, in the history in the last 10 or 15 years, we've seen a fugitive get away and just keep going. But they were eventually going to catch him. But he definitely made some mistakes that he got him wrapped up in the end, much quicker than he could have. I mean, the guy could have been close to the Canadian border. He could have been, up into upstate New York, someplace.
Gone deeper into the woods, Virginia, man, Northern Virginia, that deadfall out there. If anybody's ever dealt with deadfall, that stuff is wild.
It's the same terrain.
20 feet away. You could be 20 feet away and go, hey, guys, I got him. I see him right there 20 feet away. Yeah. It's like, okay, cool. Make your way to me. It's like, well, that's going to be about 30 minutes climbing over crap and falling down and break,
for listeners, for our city-going listeners out there, what he means by deadfall is literally dead trees, branches, vines. Like in North Carolina, Virginia, you've got briar patches, which are thick thorns. I mean, like freaking Lord of the Rings. I mean, I've literally evading, got caught horizontally off the ground and couldn't fucking move in my kit, completely cut up. And that's what these guys are dealing with. So that's what it means by deadfall. So, and then you got dead leaves. You've got, and it's summer, so everything's green, up there, especially, it's green, it's wet, it's swampy. Yeah, yeah. The dude, if it would have been winter and all the green leaves would have been off and just trees and barren, they probably would have caught him a lot quicker.
Yep.
So
Well, and he's also very lucky he didn't fire on that dog.
Yeah.
I mean, he had the gun, he had that 22. I mean, think about it. These guys.
Facing a life
I don't
sentence.
know. I don't know exactly how it played out, but you can guarantee that Bortak had this guy surrounded. They knew where he was. Probably made some calls out to him. He ignored them, and then they just let the dog go. And if this guy had fired on that dog or killed or injured the dog, he wouldn't have made it out of there for sure. That would have been he would have been done.
Yeah.
Got a hold of his head, got a hold of his face and scalp.
Yeah.
What was that dog handler you guys had on the Ranger? What was his name?
Trey.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
just
some
talked
wild.
to Trey.
Yeah, that's.
Did you?
Awesome dog stories.
Yeah, I just talked to him, man. I checked in with him the other day. Yeah. Like literally a few days ago.
Yeah,
big beast.
So,
he's even bigger now.
The dog Yoda. Yeah, he.
Meat missile.
Put the fear of God in that guy. I'm sure. Holy shit.
Yeah.
So what do you guys think? Okay, so we've kind of I think that was pretty in depth. That was interesting. What do you guys think about the after action with the I've seen there's been a lot of commentary about these guys posing with the dude and the group pictures that they took. What did you guys think about all that?
I didn't see any of that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I saw the picture. It's them basically stand there like with a on a deer. He's got the guy and they got the whole team there. That's going to cause problems for him. They whoever took the picture should have kept it to themselves, and it should have gone up on the wall in their private bar somewhere. Because in this,
I think it was they were lining up to take the picture while the news was out there. They were setting this guy up. They were all standing around that truck and all that stuff when and they had news cameras there. I mean, they had that's the downside is you've got all
the vanity of it all.
Yeah, you've got all that. The camera. What they should have done is like, hey man, we rolled this dude up, threw him in a vehicle, and taken him away. Instead, I
don't even care about that. He's a murderer. He's a scumbag.
No, yeah. But the posing and stuff with him,
the unit is gonna hurt their not hurt their capabilities. You know what I mean? But it's like that should have been internal, and it's no fault of their own because whoever was around, whatever it was. But in this day and age, man, that's just going to be. That is so persona. That's against the rules. You can't be violent. You can't be a male like that and hunt people. You have to, feel bad about it or whatever it is. That's my thing.
Right. Yeah, it's
stupid, but it's the reality.
Different times nowadays.
Yeah, I remember at a certain point we got every Marine. And the time got their cameras taken. It was a you'd get NJP'd, you'd be get court-martialed if they found you with a camera outside the wire.
Yep.
That happened.
Wow.
It was tied to tell, but I remember that. Jason, you remember that when that came down?
Yeah. I mean, I remember the early days, as you guys all do. I mean, it used to be. I know a lot more tight.
The wind-up Kodak. That's what I
actually my first deployment. Yeah. Actually, I got that back recently. And I need to develop it. I don't know where the hell I found it.
Where did you even do that?
You've got one that you had out there?
Dude, from OIF1, man.
Yeah.
Holy hell.
Dude,
that's awesome.
I know what's on there, man. I know what's on there, man. I'm probably going to have to develop that shit with some deck tall myself, man, because I know what's on there.
Yeah.
I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Thanks for having me on again, guys. It's always a good time, and I just want to say thanks to you guys and all the law enforcement, BORTAC, DEA, and all the people that went out there and put foot to ass and ran this guy down. Job well done. No one else was hurt after the fact except him in the dog bite, which I'm not going to lose sleep over. So big round of applause to everybody out there that did an awesome job. Good stuff.
Yeah, I second that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, Yousef, how can our listeners and our viewers check you out? Since,
you can find me.
You are a businessman, and
you've
got a social media presence.
Yeah, you can find me on all the normal ones. Yousef Badou and Emergence on Instagram. You can find my YouTube channel. Just get on there and Google Yousef Badou. It'll come up as Emergence. You see me on there, and I'm actually kind of spicing up some of my YouTube channel. Haven't done much on YouTube, but now I'm gearing up, especially at the end of this year, especially getting into the next year. I'm definitely putting a lot more content on YouTube in this kind of realm. So just check me out on YouTube. That's the best place to find me, and I'll just keep everyone updated. Thanks again, guys.
Nice.
Yep.
Much appreciated. Thanks for hanging out with us, brother.
Semper Fi.
This has been Savage Actual. Jason and Patrick are two former special operations guys who interview interesting guests who talk about video games, airsoft, and military subjects. Basically, they drink a lot of beer, talk about shooter games, and have fun. What's not to love? We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. And the fellas will be back soon. But in the meantime, find them on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Savage Actual. Y'all be cool, and we'll see you next time.